Now for a UN Digest by the UN Special Envoy on Financing 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, Mahmoud Mohieldin, who will help explain what's at stake, why you should care, and how everyone everywhere can take action.
Very pleased to be part of this important event to link the efforts towards dealing with the challenges of COVID-19 and the role of finance for development to the SDGs and their implementation. As the number of lives lost to COVID-19 reaches the million mark, the effect of the pandemic on livelihoods will result in nearly 400 million jobs lost. An additional 100 million people could be pushed back into extreme poverty. This is the first rise in global poverty since 1998. Those experiencing food insecurity are expected to double this year to 265 million. Recently, the IMF revised its earlier predictions. There will be a contraction in the global economy by at least 5%. World trade levels are projected to drop to anywhere between 13 to 32% as projected by the WTO. Foreign direct investment, I've seen the numbers coming from UNCTAD, showing that the figure could be declining by 40%. Remittances as well are going to see a decline by around 20%. Meanwhile, debt had increased to a record of $258 trillion in the first quarter of 2020, expected to increase further with the expansion of spending in many countries around the world. As part of the process in dealing with the crisis in its different aspects and dealing with it in different fronts, there had been a very important meeting held on the 28th of May, convened by the Prime Ministers of Canada, Jamaica, and the Secretary General. They launched an initiative on the financing for development in the era of COVID-19 and beyond. It was attended by no fewer than 50 heads of state and heads of government. As a follow-up to this important meeting, 6 discussion groups were established to produce a menu of policy options on external finance and its role in maintaining inclusive growth and creating jobs, recovering better for sustainability with the second group. A third group was created to discuss the different options related to global liquidity and financial stability. A fourth group discussed debt vulnerability. A fifth discussion group discussed how to include the private sector creditors and get them engaged to be part of the solution. And of course, issues related to illicit financial flows were not forgotten in this process. You cannot discuss finance or debt management without stopping the leakage in the financial system. Over the last few months, discussion groups met numerous times to produce a robust menu of options. There have been good engagements with many experts around the world, with international financial institutions, with many specialized organizations, think tanks, and academia. Considered as a whole, the options produced provide a roadmap for surviving the crisis in the short term, building back better with emphasis on inclusive growth, and maintaining sustainability and full recovery in the long term. This is of course a very big challenge, how to link the short-term measures to the mid-term measures to the long-term measures. But the teams worked hard in order to see how best we can do that through a good menu of options. And they made very strong links between the financial sector and the real economy. They established as well good interlinkages between dealing with liquidity challenges facing many countries and the solvency issues as well. They worked hard as well to bridge the gaps of knowledge when it comes to the policy measures required to deal with digitalization and impact of digitalization on jobs, on tax reforms, on enhancing competitiveness, and making sure that there will be digital dividend, not a digital divide. There was some good work as well on aligning budgets and national plans to achieve growth, jobs, especially for women, and to support the small and medium enterprises. And given that the informal sector had a significant contribution in many of the developing economies, some of the issues related to this sector had been tackled as well. Despite the progress in dealing with the crisis at the policy level, the need to support the most affected has only just begun. While the global fiscal response to the crisis had reached 11 trillion so far, 88% has been disbursed by advanced economies, while less than 2% has come from the least developed economies. So while some economies have the resources and the fiscal space to inject close to 10% of their GDP and more, many of the low-income countries contributed less than 1%, which is not really sufficient to deal with the emergency requirements or the support required for the economy and the vulnerable people, let alone matters related to debt and debt service. Going forward, we must capitalize upon the Sustainable Development Framework more fully and shift the focus radically towards prevention. This should start by bolstering data systems, mainstreaming an evidence-based approach, and securing adequate finance to these ends. Again, the emphasis is there on the importance of data systems, on adequate finance, and good implementation in the field. As articulated by the Secretary General during his annual Nelson Mandela lecture, COVID-19 has been likened to an X-ray, revealing the fractures in the fragile skeleton of the societies we have built. We need all hands on deck, including actors at the local, national, regional, and global levels to implement the outcomes of this process and to emerge stronger, more united, and more just. Thank you so much.